Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
From hiring freezes to shifting workforce priorities, federal HR teams are under pressure. But technology may offer a path forward, especially for smaller offices trying to stay ahead. That's the view of Rick Hamill, founder and CEO of Globally, who spoke with Federal Drive host Terry Garden about that tech.
It's not news to say that there's a lot going on in the federal HR space. Lots of changes in folks' status, lots of changes in HR policy from this administration, but also real challenges in the HR staffing itself. So as agencies are thinking about how to manage in this space, what are the biggest risks for legacy infrastructure?
The biggest risk, I think, is really looking at how organizations have set up HR. Rules are constantly changing, especially with the current administration that you're seeing, and really understanding that what's a strong foundation for the rules, regulations, and how to make sure they can set up rules that can last through that transition. I think the one thing that we're finding more and more is that technology is evolving. And so a lot of technology that has legacy information. I just had a call with a client before. They're implementing new technology within payroll, and they're realizing that with a lot of the rules and regulations coming with leave in particular states, where they're seeing that when it comes to visa or ID verification, like I-9s, a lot of the legacy platforms don't have that infrastructure already put in place. And so they're needing to have structures that are going to allow them to evolve and be up to date with what rules and regulations are coming into place with new rules and regulations regarding employment laws.
I didn't really expect you to go straight to rules and regulations, but let's follow up on that, because you have written that reframing regulation as a strategic advantage is a way to think about driving change. So tell me more about that concept and what HR teams today should be thinking about.
Well, I think that right now we live in the world, I like to call it the popcorn generation. We want things very quickly. And so as HR, if we're looking to recruit talent, we're looking to retain talent, we need to have technology that's going to allow us to be at the forefront of that as well. So as we think about rules and regulations, I talked about leave policies, maternity leave, paternity leave. A lot of states are starting to implement some of those things to ensure that the residents are actually protected. So employers are having to implement that, and they have to have technology to do that. The rules are very complicated. They're not as black and white as we like them to be. And so technology allows them to be proactive, allows them to make sure they're fully compliant in those regards. Technology, though, if you look at technology 10 years ago and technology that's coming out today, things like AI, look at automation, those are things that are allowing companies to really be at the forefront of how they're managing these things to stay compliant, but allow them also to retain that talent or attract that talent, knowing that they're working for an employer that can actually offer these benefits and actually can show them and have transparency behind them.
So a lot of people spend a lot of time complaining about compliance requirements, especially in HR, but you're an advocate of saying that if you start from the compliance requirement, you can really drive policy change and technology change. Tell me more.
Well, I think this absolutely is correct. I think when you're looking at technology, technology is really there to make things a lot more simplistic. It's not really there to, drive manual processes. And I think that if you think of HR, you think of legacy processes and procedures, that's what it was. It was more manual processes. Technology now, you can get things done a lot faster. And so when we talk about rules and regulations, the change in minimum wage, the updates of statutory requirements in particular states, those are things that, or even using I-9s, for example. I remember, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but do you remember when you completed I-9s in a paper format and provided a copy of your ID to your employer? Now you can actually use E-Verify and actually do that and stay fully compliant. A lot of employers in the past, for example, using the I-9 example, they were worried about fines and regulations because they were not compliant. They were not maintaining those records completely. But using technology like E-Verify allows them to, one, reduce the risk of non-compliance, two, make sure that they're fully, they've got the information that they have in front of them, and also constantly reminds them when things are out of date or expiring, which was the biggest pain point for a lot of employers. So automation and technology really allows organizations to, one, not focus on, the administrative work, but be more strategic in their business because they know that what they're doing with technology is going to keep them fully compliant.
I'm speaking with Rick Hamill. He's the founder and CEO of Globally. All right, well, let's talk about some of the technology then. What are the most promising HR technologies that agencies can use to do more with less? If they have less HR staff, they have more work to do. What are the technologies that you recommend that help them stay ahead of the curve?
Well, I'm always going to be a little biased. They can definitely take a look at Globally. I think that's one they can look at. But there are really good platforms out there that allow, depending on what they're looking to manage from an HR perspective. Workday is a really good one. HiBob is another good one, where they've got some automation and they're constantly looking at investing and making sure they're staying up to date with how companies can actually streamline their HR administration or payroll administration within their platforms. Globally, our focus is how do we make things a lot more simplistic. Whether you're a CEO that has 5 employees or you're a CEO that has 200,000 employees, we want you to be able to streamline that through automation and compliance. We also allow, we kind of think about the localization piece of it as well. So when you're in states like California, when the second spoken language is Spanish, how do you make sure that you localize that as much as possible so that employees can provide that information in their local language and feel comfortable in benefit administration or providing the information to them to make sure that the company stays compliant. Other things that you want to look at is the automation of payroll. Payroll rules and regulations are very complicated. And so one thing that I will always say is, when you look at the United States, you don't look at it as one country. You look at it as 50 countries because the rules and regulations are individually separate. And so what you want to do is have technology that's going to allow them to streamline that. Another thing that I will say is that you want to look at technology that's really emphasizing AI. And when I say AI, I'm not referring to a chatbot. When I say AI, I'm looking at automation, looking at ways that you can do comparison, reporting, what things that can spot check for you to make sure that you're doing things the right way. There's a lot of great technology out there. I'm not going to say that's ChatGPT. What I will say, though, is HR technology that has AI as the foundation of their platform. I think that is really important because it allows them to really spot check information and get information readily completed in a matter of minutes versus days.
There's so much concern about AI deployed in the HR space, replacing a human in terms of making determinations about an individual and their eligibility. But there's also, a hope that AI can help you manage some of this better. So from an HR professional's perspective, where is the boundary on what is a good use of AI in HR and what is maybe a questionable use?
Well, that's a really good point, Terry. I will say that AI is really supposed to be used as an enabler. It's supposed to be used as a tool. You have to have humans make the final decision. There's so many variables when you throw information into AI, but it's really there to help streamline that. So I think that you can have AI sort out your reporting, flag anomalies, spot check your work. But at the end of the day, a human has to make the decision. You do not want AI to determine if someone's eligible for hire. You don't want someone to determine if their performance review is good enough for a performance increase, because there is some discriminatorial practices that you do absolutely, unfortunately, feed into AI. So you do need to still have a human eye on that. But I think AI really allows you to, is an enabler to allow you to get things done a lot faster. I speak with a lot of our customers. I just had a customer who I spoke with the other day who said to me, we were asking them for payroll information, hire information, how many countries their employees in, and it took them almost 2 weeks to get that information to us. We actually then finally got all the information, we uploaded it, and we showed them within a click of a button. We were able to get that done for them a lot faster. We were able to pull that information, give them the reports that they need. That's actually why we won that customer. But AI was allowed to, what took them 2 weeks, we got it done in seconds. So AI can be a really powerful tool for payroll, for HR, if it's used the right way. But to your point, humans have to have the final say.
One of the things that federal agencies have always struggled with is strategic workforce planning. That's going to be even a bigger issue in the next few months as agencies get through this big layoff and force reduction period and try to figure out what they need to accomplish their goals going forward. From a technologist perspective, are there technologies, are there tools that you would recommend that agencies begin with to begin that strategic workforce planning process?
Yeah, I will say that, and we've got a partnership with Workday. Workday actually has a really good workforce planning module within their platform. It really allows companies to look at the rules and regulations, one, to make sure they're fully compliant if they have to do any layoffs, but two, what that looks like when you're doing any type of reduction. So what are the gaps now? How is that possibly impact your business? AI can actually be used for that as well to see what the actual impact could be if you remove certain roles based on your KPIs that you've tied out as well. We also want to look at a number of performance management platforms that really allow you to kind of see that as well. So if you build your KPIs into those platforms and you remove some of those stats, it should show you the impact to that as well. I think it's really important that when you're planning any type of reduction, and we know that in the U.S. government right now that's happening, you need to understand that also means that you have to adjust some of your goals and your KPIs. If you have planned that you're going to get X amount of work done or hitting certain goals with a certain amount of staff, if you're reducing 20 to 30% of your team, you do understand that that's going to either expand out your KPIs, or you're just not going to be able to accomplish them. And so making sure that you're having very real conversations internally and understanding the consequences of those terminations, I think that's really important. And sometimes we think or we hear, oh, we're just reducing budgets, but we still need to hit our KPIs. And most companies who do that realistically don't ever hit their KPIs because they don't actually plan realistically what can actually be done in the capacity that actually happens with that. One thing that I'll also mention as well is that you do need to take a step back. You do realize when you do any type of workforce planning reductions, you do also have to realize that you're also going to have attrition as well. Employees are going to leave the organization when they don't feel comfortable. And so when you think about that, you can see that in some of the blogs right now, especially the U.S. government, you can see where they are saying, hey, I'm not comfortable, or I don't know if I'm going to stay in this role. The government or any employer has to really take a step back and say, am I going to have, if I'm going to reduce it by 25%, realistically, am I going to lose 30%? And what do I need to do to backfill? And we also know that as employers, backfilling employees or rehiring employees or hiring employees, there's a cost associated with that as well. So you need to balance all of that in your factor of any type of employee reduction, because you are going to, it's inevitably going to happen. There's a lot of data